we have rated cybersecurity as the number one threat to our strategic and operational plan. I want our employees and our members to be able to grow in the cybersecurity journey because it's not a destination. It's going to constantly evolve. If you have 100 passwords, hey, let's get one a week into that password manager, and eventually you have 100 unique passwords rather than that one common password being used across 100 accounts. I
Yeah.
need this one person. Here's the reason why I need this one person. They have to trust everything that I say. Because if I say I need 10 and I only got one, then I should be furious that I didn't get the other nine.
Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Daniel Ford, the CISO of Jovia Financial Credit Union. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past theirs. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Dan, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Jovia Financial Credit Union and your role there as CISO?
Absolutely. So, Jovia is one of the more larger credit unions in the country. And funny enough, I think I'd have to go back and look at the stats, and not that it's too important, but I think maybe we're like the 12th largest in New York. But if we weren't in New York, I could think it's something like 28 states would be the largest credit union in that state. And it just so happens to be New York's pretty big. There's a lot of money here. Here we are. We're not even in the biggest in our area. We're the third largest we're just under 5 billion in assets. And if you're not familiar with what a credit union is, we are not for profit. We are owned by our members, whereas bank has shareholders. So we try to give back to our members. We try to make sure they have the best rates, provide the best service. Concierge. We're like got concierge financial people. And my role at Jovia as the Chief Information Security Officer, and really I co-manage what we call the Organizational Risk Committee, and that's taking a look at all risk throughout the whole organization. So we don't just have cyber. There's a risk. There's financial risk. There's fraud risk. There's business continuity risk. Like, all these things kind of roll up. And our chief financial officer, Karen, and I we partner on this. So we take a look at all aspects of risk, with cyber being one of them, and it's a huge one. My peers, as the CISO at Jovia, report to the CEO. We have rated cybersecurity as the number one threat to our strategic and operational plan since 2020. They recognize that this is a huge business risk. It could completely disrupt our strategy, completely disrupt our operations, and it's taken quite seriously. This is definitely a top-down, bottoms-up approach to cybersecurity. I have the complete support of my peers, the CEO, and the board, as well as we make it fun for our employees. We're not very punitive, where I know a lot of organizations are. There's even a lot of people talk about, well, does phishing work? Does it not work in terms of the testing? I believe it does if you do it the right way. You can do the right thing the wrong way and get bad results. You can do the wrong thing the right way and still get bad results. You have to do the right thing the right way. And I feel at Jovia, we have been. So I get to go out to the community a lot. Last year, we hosted our first cybersecurity conference geared towards students in the area. We had a lot of our partner vendors there. We had 53 students show up, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. We're going to be doing it again. We're hosting one now for our business members to try to help them with cybersecurity, and we're doing another conference in October. Cybersecurity Month. We're going to do it for the Long Islanders again to try to help raise their cyber literacy and their cyber hygiene.
I love that. Well, there's I'd say about a dozen things I'd like to dive into there. But let's start with, you were talking about doing the right thing the right way, and you mentioned with the phishing email. So let's just start there. How do you do phishing, testing the right way, in from your perspective?
So the first thing, I mean, of course, we send it out. We make sure things are relevant, and when people fail, we actually talk to them. Like, what's going on? And we want to be approachable. And I think a lot of times cybersecurity is not necessarily approachable. So we talk to them. What's going on? A lot of times it's, oh, well, we're too busy. I'm too many busy doing too many things. Great. That's good information because then we started taking that to the overall organization. How do we as a chief officer team make sure that people are focused on the tasks that they're supposed to be focused on? And email is a distraction. So one of the things that we did over the course of years is now no longer does any official communication internally go out through email.
Wow.
It comes out through our what we call our huddle. It's our intranet. Everything's there, no matter what it is. A system is down, huddle notification. It's got the pop up in your browser. That's something to look at. Teams communications will go out for smaller teams. Nothing official goes out through email. So now if an email came up, it probably was something that can wait a day or two. It's not going to be necessarily mission critical because if it was critical, Teams notification, intranet site through huddle. And so those are just some of the things that we do to try to take the information that we're getting from our staff and then apply it. A lot of companies have cyber champions. So we do. But we meet with our cyber champions every month to find out what is it that they want to hear from cybersecurity. What are they hearing from their peers on the front line and other back office positions? And they help promote good cyber hygiene practices internally. And we have what we call the Cyber Bowl. That it's a game. It's a game that lasts several months. That there's Jeopardy-like questions, there's time-based questions, kind of like the trivia going to a bar. So and then at our annual conference, now we will crown the winner. Last year we did it at our employee event. This year we're going to do it at our own conference. We want to make it fun. We want people to be raised up rather than lowering the bar. Let's raise the bar, and to raise the bar, we can raise everyone up. And since then, when we do these phishing tests, if we get 10 people, I'm surprised. Because now they start to recognize, oh, wait a minute. That's if we get some of them. Some of them are getting a little cocky right now. I'll get emails back. Yeah, nice try. You're not getting me on this one. It's so awesome to see the swagger. Love it. And it's a lot of fun to see them involved. I let them know like they're the first and most important line of defense. And they're going to fail. That's where my team comes in. It's once they got past you, then we start to look at things. But if they don't get past you, we don't have to worry about it. I mean, I say that loosely. We still worry about it, but
Of course.
They're the first line of defense.
I love that. I mean, I love the fact that you're taking this very positive approach to cyber because it is so easy for it to be such a negative thing. I mean, it just inherently, right? It's a threat, right? These cyber threats that, I think the word threat is a very negative word. And I think that starts the thinking and the conversation in a negative way when it comes to cyber. And for so many people, it is just a negative thing. It's costly, right? So they see it as an expense. They see it as a threat. And you've completely flipped that around and made this a positive thing. And I love that. Was that in place when you got there? Is this your brainchild, or was that just the culture of Jovia when you got there? How did this come to fruition?
I would like to say this is in large part due to me, but it really has to also do with our CEO. He's a very positive person. And so we have a very healthy relationship. And part of that was when Jovia became Jovia, it was a brand change. And so as part of that brand change, we wanted to be an innovative credit union. Well, what does that mean? Innovative could be anything. But what I like to say is, especially when going through when I did my doctorate in information assurance, innovation or a new idea is just a little bit new. It's just a little bit different than what everyone else is doing it. So part of that was, and I hate to say the word fail fast because again, that's a negative aspect. I don't like to employ those negative words. Let's be positive. So it was learn fast. And if we're going to learn fast, then we have to accept that we're going to fail at times, but how quickly do we recover? And that's an extremely important part, especially and I got this from my doctor. I had an aha moment during it because at one point in my career, and maybe a lot of people were like this, I had to be right. I was just like I would die on that sword.
I think we've all
But
been there.
then yeah, but then I realized through my doctorate that in quantitative experiments, you have a hypothesis, but you're only testing to either accept or reject your null hypothesis. So I'm either accepting or rejecting being wrong, not that I'm right. And it just kind of really changed everything about me. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not about being right. It's about not being wrong. And
Right.
you attack things from a completely different angle at that point. And convincing John of doing this was not a difficult task because he was like, yes, we have to do this. Let's learn fast. And so we did. And every time in the beginning, like we were getting, 30 to 40% of the company on these phishing tests that were failing. And we had to understand why, because that is how that hacker is going to get in, most
Yep.
likely. It's going to be through human error. So let's figure it out. And kudos to my team, kudos to to everyone at Jovia because they bought in and they trusted us, and that was key. They trusted that we weren't looking to use this against them.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, I think you actually I have a question about Jovia. I mean, given that you said that John, right, the CEO,
Yeah.
he's a very positive person. Was Jovia, is that short for jovial? Was that why they came up with it? Because it was very kind of positive and upbeat. Is that where the name
I,
comes
I
from?
I think so. So we had a different name that was trademarked by another credit union, and so if they started to come into Long Island, we would lose. So that was a part of it. We were going to go through all this conversion, and they did want something that was upbeat. They
Nice.
and so Jovia. I mean, I don't know if it was jovial, but they did definitely wanted something that was upbeat, and the board had to pick the name. So the board picked it. There were several different names. The colors are, fun colors of this green and purple. And, whereas, you look at a lot of financial institutions, it's red, it's blue, it's very, colors that are not about growth. And
Mhm.
green is about growth. We want you to grow with
Yep.
us. And I think, at least that's the part where I take it. I want our employees and our members to be able to grow in the cybersecurity journey because it's not a destination. It's going to constantly evolve. And that part where when you were talking about negative, I wanted to jump in with this part of it. Cybersecurity criminal activity is also a business. They're just as sophisticated. They have help desks. They have pipelines, just like we do. So they've gotten better. No longer do we see phishing emails that come in with a bunch of misspellings and like
Yep.
that's laziness on their part. They've gotten good. And I would say in some cases, great.
Yep.
So we had to as well. We had to adapt. And it's a business on both sides.
Well, how do you take this approach? And I know you've got a good one. How do you take this approach of kind of positive reinforcement and a positive perspective on cyber and and kind of apply this to people? So you're in terms of like cyber hygiene, for instance, right? Getting this across to everybody. You have a very, I think, not necessarily a rather unique and really good perspective on this, and I'd love for you to share it with everybody. How do you communicate this whole idea of cybersecurity versus and cyber hygiene?
So the first part in anything is we have to have a common language, and that's where I get this cyber literacy aspect. And maybe I'm not necessarily a wordsmith; it just sounded good, but it seemed to make sense and starts to resonate. We have to talk the same language, and so I don't need you to understand every little idiosyncrasy about cybersecurity and all the jargon that is used because I think every industry has their own jargon. And I don't want to, go down that path, but I need you to understand some basic concepts. So if I say MFA, we all understand what MFA is, right? That way I don't have to say multi-factor authentication. So we teach them that. I look at it as just like as if I'm a teacher or a parent. I need to teach you some very basic concepts. Let's in the beginning, before we cross the street, we're going to hold the child's hand, look both ways, constantly reminding them. And eventually, it's like, hey, mom, dad, I don't need to hold your hand. I'm 10. I want to cross on my own. Okay, well, let's look both ways. Don't run. We have to, take those baby steps and gently bring them along. And it's our job to teach them how to have cyber literacy, just like our parents teach you how to talk. If you talk to a child and that baby goo goo gaga talk, they never learn how to, pronunciate words. Like we talk to them like little, human beings, and they eventually they pick up words and they learn how to walk and things like that. So I take that same approach, and I'm patient with them. I'm accessible. We have an internal podcast we do on a monthly basis. And in the beginning, what we did is we did movie reviews that had cybersecurity implications so we could get them to say, this is what this is. Like here you can see it in the movie. Okay, this is Hollywood style still, but the concept is there. When we started talking about like elder abuse fraud when it comes to cybersecurity, we watched the movie with Jason Statham, Beekeeper.
Beekeeper, that's a good one.
This is real things that are happening. So this way our call center people, if they can show some, compassion with that person calling in thinking they may have been defrauded, like this happens. And we would talk about events. We would talk about how Jovia is protected against this particular attack that occurred at some other financial institution. This is what we've employed, and we just keep it with a journey. We're going to branches every month and talking to members, talking to the staff there. What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What are their members that come into that branch? What are they talking about? And then we just talk to the members. What are they most concerned with? And it's a human element. And I just come back to it was a long time ago. I read this book by Jerry Spence called How to Argue and Win Every Time. And it really wasn't about, arguing. It was more about like defining the win. What does a win mean? Like if you're arguing with your spouse, that it's completely different than with your boss or subordinate, anything along those lines. It's got to be different. Define the win. And to me, the win in cybersecurity is just reaching one person with a little bit of an aha moment. I got them to use a password manager, got them to do something that just took them to that little bit of a next step. It's a journey, that cyber hygiene. I go, okay, let's take a look at, the passwords that we're using. If you have 100 passwords, hey, let's get one a week into that password manager, and eventually you have 100 unique passwords rather than that one common password being used across 100 accounts. So
I love
to
that.
me, that's the win. It's a small, 2% change, period over period is monumental when you take a look at that over the course of a year. If I can improve 2% month over month, 26% improvement over the year, that means every 4 years I could completely reinvent myself. And so if I can do that with some of cybersecurity perspective, at 4 years, I've gotten someone 100% improvement in that cyber hygiene. That's the goal.
That's
2%
awesome.
month over month.
That's awesome. So how do you guys go about that? Tactically, if you will, then in getting that education out. And do you have a kind of, have you standardized it? Do you use kind of cyber awareness videos like Breach Secure Now, things like that, where people, the employees might get some sort of entertaining cyber related video every week, or what's your approach?
Yes, we do that. I can't think of a better analogy right now than pharmaceutical ads because they're everywhere, right? So, I kind of do that same thing with cybersecurity. I have
Love
my
that.
own marketing person that works directly for me, and she's amazing. Her name's Abjen, so she puts together all of the little newsletters, all of our tips and tricks. We do little creative videos ourselves, and we send them
Nice.
out. We do we use Arctic Wolf for that type of cybersecurity awareness content. So we have that. And in order to become a cyber champion, you had to do all of your extra training. So not just the mandatory, but there's ones that we say that are recommended. And if you've done all of those and you haven't fallen victim to a phishing test and you've reported them, you become a cyber champion. There's kudos that you wind up getting for that. And there's a lot of times there's salary incentives because hey, you're doing more, and by doing more, they get bumps, increases in their performance salary. Lost my word there, but basically the performance
They get
increases.
paid.
So
They get money for
yeah,
do good,
yes,
get
basically.
money. I love
Yeah,
it.
you do good things, you get rewarded. So
Awesome.
we hit them with everything. We've got the podcasts, we've got newsletters that go out. Then the newsletters are on our huddle, so it's not in an email.
Yep.
So they get to go there. They get to do the regular training. They get to see us. There's these games, everything we can to get
That's
them
fantastic.
involved. Like our podcast gets, on average about 80 people live, out of our
Wow.
600. So, we get a lot, and then a lot of them are watching it after the fact. We get really good engagement with the newsletters because the newsletters are, hey, these are things that are going on. And if you happen to see this, then it means this. So they get to get some actionable things because we want them to take this home to their personal lives. Like we've even made it to the password manager that we put out. They can use it personally. And a matter of fact, anyone in your house, if they want it, we'll give it to them too. Like we are willing to pay for it to make sure your household is, cyber safe.
Oh, that's fantastic. And do you feel comfortable sharing with everybody what password manager you guys have chosen for that?
LastPass.
Nice. All right.
Yep.
Fantastic. So I just love this whole positive approach to cyber and cyber hygiene. I think that's fantastic. And I know a lot of people, I mean, you don't even think of these things, right? I mean, I think a lot of businesses, when they think of cyber, because they're coming at it from a negative perspective, they're not seeing all of these cool, fun ways that you can engage with cyber topics. And so it just becomes this big negative thing. So they do less, and they do it poorly. Whereas you come at it this very fun, engaging, positive way, and now you've got all these ideas, podcasts, and newsletters and tips and cyber heroes and all these things. Now you've created this culture, this positive corporate culture around good cyber hygiene, which, just like you said, if you want to be selfish about it, it makes your job easier, which is great, but it makes the organization better, which is just incredible. So kudos there.
Yeah, one of the parts of that is while it's there is a selfish aspect to it, but really what it does is the same reason why I like things like Six Sigma. I want to automate so this way the humans get to deal with the complex problems. So with all of my regular employees at Jovia, if they're taking care of all the low-hanging fruit, when now we get to actually pay attention to that complex cyber problem that occurred, not dealing with the basic firefighting. Now we're having to deal with a forest fire, or hopefully preventing that forest fire. But that's the goal. Like we want to work on the really good problems, and let's think about the problems that we could have, and let's solve them before it happens. Because
Yeah.
we're trying to get to not proactive. Proactive is it's pretty easy. It's predictive. We want to predict where the next thing is going to happen and already be there and have had it thwarted before it ever happens. Proactive, I think, is, oh, we're going based on what we already know. No, let's figure out what we don't know. And that's the beautiful part about having a great team. We iterate off of one another. They really take into the spirit of themselves of knowledge is like a campfire. And that's what you know. The outer glow is what you know you don't know. And then everything you don't see is what you don't know you don't know. And we're trying to just keep building that fire so that way we can handle more about things that we know we don't know. And hopefully we have prepared for those aspects of what we know we don't know. Or yeah, basically
Yeah.
the very black outer part, right? Like we know
That's
we
right.
don't know some things.
I love that. Well, let's dive into the predictive, aspect there. I mean, that's a fantastic idea. how do you go about that? What's your approach? What are you guys predicting? Obviously not, divulging any sort of security issue, but in general, things that other people can apply to their own business. How do you take that approach, that mindset of being, predictive and kind of go beyond just being proactive or in most cases reactive? But how do you get there? What's the mindset and what are some things that you guys are trying to predict?
So there are some easy ways in which I think organizations could do this, and I think it becomes even easier. And even though there's some people that don't necessarily like it, I happen to like in the beginning here just using the kill chain because it's easy for people to understand. I can put the NASCAR picked logos in each area of the kill chain, and I can show the board and go, hey, if I don't have at least two logos in each area, I have a problem. And if I have one that says gap, that's a real problem. I am predicting based on the kill chain that this is how I'm going to get compromised. And that's an easy way to predict. Just throw it up there. Here it is. You've got all of these different phases of the kill chain, and then you have the individual pieces to that: identify, protect, and once you have that, you put those NASCAR logos up there. Where do you see a gap? Where do you see you only have one? Because it's going to fail. You're going to have a control failure. And when that happens, what do you have that's going to back it up?
Yeah.
And so I believe myself and many cybersecurity professionals believe the blended threat is still the largest threat to any organization, where it comes in through email and it goes out to the web. So I want to have a lot of logos in those areas. And if you do, you are and should be able to detect, because things are going to happen at a different pace depending on which level it is. I don't know that everyone does that. I know that most of them believe that the blended threat is still probably the largest threat. And what are they doing? So I explain this to the board. I explain this to my peers. They probably ad nauseum, and I tend to get what I ask for. I don't ask for any more than what I know my team can get accomplished that year. I don't believe in this. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it, because you're not being a good executive. There are plenty of executives that say, "Well, I'm going to ask for 10 people and I hope I get one." No, because now you're essentially going about it dishonestly. I
Yeah.
need this one person. Here's the reason why I need this one person. They have to trust everything that I say. Because if I say I need 10 and I only got one, then I should be furious that I didn't get the other nine. And so you're not being a genuine, executive if you're doing that. If I say I need $1 million extra next year, I better spend that $1 million. And I don't want to spend it on frivolous things. The $1 million attached to these 6 programs, and this is what we're going to get done. And if we say we're going to get it done, we better get it done. Because I believe it, and it's just simple things. I don't think that anything that I'm doing with my team, I've gotten them to believe in. It's what, when, and how. Ideally, my team will come up with the what. But even if they do come up with the what, I'm still accountable to that. I cannot wind up for pushing that off on anyone else. I'm accountable to that what. When, I'm going to put it back on you. When can you get this done? It's my job to sell that when to everyone else. But you say you're going to get this done in 3 months. Perfect. Don't get it to me in 3 weeks, because then you sandbagged, and that's bad. We get plus or minus 10%. So you might have gotten it in 2 months, 3 weeks, or 3 months, 3 weeks. That's considered fine. But we don't sandbag. We are accurate. And then the how. Maybe we should talk about the how. I've got some experience, but ultimately, I'm going to leave you to do it however you want to do it. If as long as it's not going to hurt your career or Jovia, I'll let you find out the fire's hot. Go ahead. But by doing that, we get the things done that we say we're going to get done. And it's simple, but that's hard. That's discipline. It's easy to get motivated. It's hard to stay disciplined throughout that, because motivation is going to peak and then it's going to come back down. You have to stay disciplined. And I believe we do that quite well at Jovia, throughout all of technology, including cyber.
That's fantastic. I mean, and I can't help but think, as you talk about these topics, you do it with so many great kind of, clear positive, leadership ideals that are clearly embedded in your thinking. So it comes across, and I think you you may be one of the hardest working guys in cyber. Just looking at all the things that you're doing, but I can't help but think, is this, is a lot of this, does this come from your work as an executive coach? Is this from your work at with your, and I'd like to dive into all of these, with your Echelon Orchid, as the founder there? Are these things that just kind of blend together, or is it, how's this work?
The very beginning, all of this comes from the learnings I had growing up playing baseball. My dad was my coach throughout, basically all the way up and through, being an adult. And it was very, very simple. You give 100%, 100% of the time. And if you do that, you will win even against those that are better than you, because they know they're better and they're going to take a play off. And you won't. And this is why in baseball, a lot of times the underdog wins. You have that ground ball with eyes, type of thing. It just sneaks through. You hit that ground ball, it takes 3 plays to get you out. They got to catch it, they got to throw it, and someone else has got to catch it. And if you're always given that 100%, you're going to win more. And then I have people that have challenged that. Well, what if you're sick? Okay, if I'm sick and all I have is my original 70%, I better give all of that 70%. It's no matter what it is. It's whatever I have in the gas tank that day. If that's my gas tank, let's give it all. The next part of that is the other lesson that he instilled upon all of us is that you're only as good as the next game you play. So I took that as you're only as good as whatever you choose to do next. So it doesn't matter how big of a win or how big of a loss you took. I modified that over the years after reading Rudyard Kipling's poem If. And he says in there, and it's a poem to his son. I think his son was in India at the time in the military, but he wrote this letter to him basically saying, this is what you have to do if you're going to be a man. Right. And so we had to say adult, you could change it out, whatever it is. This is what you need to be an adult. But the piece in there that has stuck with me is, if you can treat triumph and disaster as the same two imposters. So when I have a really big win or a really big loss, I have a nice bottle of whiskey. I pour my drink, a little 2 ounces. When that 2 ounces is gone, I stop celebrating and I stop feeling sorry for myself. It's done. Now it's time to get back after it again, because you're only as good as what you do next. But you got to take some time, a little bit of time to celebrate, a little bit of time. Go ahead, feel sorry for yourself. For me, that ends with that last sip of that whiskey.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. That's such a good approach, and I think everybody could learn from that and implement that, because far too often you see people over celebrate, and then overindulge in feeling bad about the losses or the defeats, when it's really, I mean, I take the approach of there's not really a loss. You haven't failed until you've given up. You're simply learning, that's like Edison, 1,000 ways or 10,000 ways to not make the light bulb. Then you get it, right? Then eventually you figure out how to make the light bulb, because you've done all the other ways not to make it. And so you don't feel bad when on your second attempt it didn't work. Like what did you, who's ever started something and was great at it, from the get? Nobody. It's just not how it works. You gotta learn by doing all the wrong things to figure out what's right. So,
Yeah.
and I know you take a very similar approach to that, kind of as you said, kind of learning, right? Learning fast instead of failing fast, right? And I think that's such an important distinction. It seems like just semantics, right? It's just wordplay. I think it's a lot more than that.
It really is, because as you said, failing is giving up. I'm not I'm not giving up. My team's not giving up. None of us are giving up. We're going to stay the course. We know that this is a journey. There's going to be highs and lows, and the idea is, how do we stay grounded in that? The other part is that what I instill in my team is that you're going to train on the job. 2 hours a week minimum, you're training on the job. So my managers know they don't get to base their resource allocation on a 40-hour work week. They have 38 hours because 2 hours I'm giving back to the team and they're going to train. Their whole thing is they have to tell me what they're training on. And that's it. Get better. You're going to be better. We're going to continuously improve, every year. When I hire junior people into the organization, they are hired in knowing that they're going to have to get 2 certifications that year that I'm paying for. And when they do, they're getting a performance increase. And then everyone, and I think this is the best deal in town. In anyone out there that winds up listening, especially the CFOs, EC Council, it's like $3,000 a year. It's called like the CERT Club, and you get unlimited training, unlimited certifications that year. And you can only take one course at a time. You finish the course, you pass your certification, you get the next one. And then every year thereafter for that individual, it's like $1,500. Like
Nice.
all these companies have like typically like a 5,500. I love SANS training. SANS is right in your neck of the woods. Used to be in my backyard as well. Some of their courses are like $11,000 right now. And I'm not saying it's not worth it, but Easy Counsel is pretty respected as well. So, anyone out there, like go that's your they have everything that SANS has, and it's pretty on par in my opinion, and it's great. So my whole team every year, no matter who you are in the organization, you're getting at least one certification until they're all gone. Until every single thing at EC Council has been done, you're going to do every single certification there. So great deal in town, but that's the motto. Like, how are we going to get better? We're going to get better by having more knowledge. The more knowledge we have, and maybe this is also a little bit different because I tell them the reason why I want you to have more knowledge is you'll never be a yes person to me because you can get a job tomorrow. You're going to be so marketable that you're going to choose to work with me. And if you want to leave, hey, I'll help you. I will gladly help you, and I will open up. You want an introduction? No problem, because I know you're going to hit a point at Jovia and working with me that you can't learn anymore here. So let me help you still as a mentor to the next place. And I can even tell you, if you want to go to place ABC, hey, you might not want to go there. Not a great culture. They're not going to do things. Let me try to help you because I also selfishly might have need for them in the future. And so if I do, I want to be able to call them back so that I can let one of my friends know, hey, I'm just letting you borrow this person. They're on loan until I have a need of them again. So
I love that. Well, I mean, and when you're taking care of your folks that way, and you've got a great culture, of positive relationships. You instill and inspire them to and empower them to learn and grow as an individual, as a professional. I mean, what's not to love? How are they going to do, much better? And are they now? Most of your folks they're remote. Most of you.
yes.
So let me dive into this because I love the positive kind of culture that you guys create. What do you do? How does that translate remotely? How do you guys keep that? Is it just in the way that you communicate via Teams? Do you have Teams meetings? How do you manage a remote group and keep that kind of positive culture kind of going? Or is it just kind of organic and natural and there's nothing you really have to do there?
So there's always going to be people that are going to be on one side or the other. Very few do we get that they have to kind of mix. They're either like everyone's got to be in the office or remote work is this. And in an ideal world, I would say like if budgets were unlimited, I would want to get together with my team in person like once or twice a year. And that way we can do a little bit more team building and develop our strategy where we are not going to have devices all around us and be distracted. The rest of that time, you need to go and actually execute. In that execution phase, I believe remote work is 100% superior to ever being in the office because the distractions are minimal. I can get a lot more done. That's in the ideal world. So not everyone has unlimited budgets. So the onus is on leadership to try to continue to make that connection. And I think it's still also very simple. I just need to hear your voice. I can have this one-on-one time with you, and we're going to talk about what's important to you. My job is to figure out what's important to you and then help you achieve whatever that is. Still making that personal connection. I don't have to be in person for that. I just have to take the time. Does it more on me to make sure that happens? Absolutely. But that's why I have the chief in my title. I chose that path. I chose the burden of leadership, and I don't take that lightly. And anyone who does, or if they say you have to be in the office to do those things, I think you're being lazy because you're not meeting your people where they need to be. Leadership is not about forcing people your path. It's about adapting to their path. And if some of my team wants to be in the office, okay, fine. I'm not going to tell you no. Like that's up to you. But I'm going to meet you where you need to be. The goal is still the same, results. You told me when you were going to get this done by. I sold that win elsewhere. Don't miss. And if you don't miss, everything's great. But we do virtual happy hours, virtual coffees. We have an employee resource group that is called Work is Where the Wi-Fi is. I didn't come up with the name, so whoever did, kudos to them. And so I'm a part of that because I'm a remote person for the most part. And like tomorrow for that, I'm like, hey, I'll host a little, ask me anything over coffee tomorrow from 9:15 to 10 o'clock. Come in, ask me whatever you want. I talk about productivity with this group, how to stay focused in a remote environment. How do you keep your remote employees engaged? And part of that is just, well, call them up. I keep like if I was a professor, every day, so to speak, here's my team's chat. Just come on in. I'm on camera. Can do any of those kind of things that you want. The idea is that kind of how do you mimic that open door policy? Now, I can tell you for myself, when I work in the office, I basically I don't feel like I get anything done.
Yeah.
I meet with people and I get nothing done.
Yep.
And so it's tough. I'm someone that is internally motivated, so I don't need the external discipline of a building for me to get my work done. And I look to hire people with very similar things. I employ a lot of pseudoscience in my employee relationships. And I say that because it's kind of what it is. It's pseudoscience. It's the Briggs Myers things. But I don't use Briggs Myers. I have three that I use to kind of help me understand someone. And I use DISC. I use the Michigan model of innovation, and then I use another one out of Stanford that's called Saboteurs. So I look at all three of those because they're basically free. I can get to people. And if they want to know a little bit more about themselves, there's another one called Clifton Strength Builders that really gets into that. I call that like, this is my business love language. So like the very top one for me is learner. So if you're not someone that's looking to learn, we're just not going to get along. So but I go through all of that with the people so I understand how do they innovate, what's their disc profile look like, and saboteurs are typically what your strengths are, but how it can very quickly turn into a weakness. So for me, I have a hyperachievement saboteur, which then if I were to try to apply that to you, then we wouldn't get along if you weren't also a hyperachiever. I'm always looking for what's next, but not everyone is. Some people need to stay behind and make it better. So, but I know that about myself, so I don't want to push that onto you. So I look at that. I help my managers with how do we talk to our people in these ways. It helps me understand where you are, and then I can talk your language. Because even with the cyber literacy, we have to have a common language. So I want to have a common language with my people.
I love that. So can you, before we wrap up here, because I think we could do this all day, can you tell us, I mean, we've got, Echelon Orchid, you're the founder. Can you tell us, everybody, give us an overview of what you're doing there, the work you're doing?
Yeah, I've been a little bit lax on that as of late, and that's mainly because I have a distillery with my wife as well, and that's been when my spare time I do that. But I'll be putting that back up. This is my journey on leadership. I have some friends that come on, and we talk a lot about leadership. I talk a lot about technology, and really, it's kind of it is that journey on leadership, and I use that to take the transcripts to help me with the book I'm writing on leadership. I think that there's other ways. I think my approach is a little bit novel in this. Maybe it's not, but at least it's my thoughts, it's my journey on that. And I think that I can help a lot of people with discovering whether or not they want to be a leader or not. You don't necessarily have to be. And leader is not necessarily a job title. Some people have a title and they just have to manage people. They manage processes, and that's perfectly fine. But maybe I want to help them understand what you don't want to do. I think that's more important than what you do want to do. Like I know that there's not enough money in the world that's going to want me to basically go be a garbage collector. I don't do well with bad smells, and I would just be vomiting all day. So I know I'm not going to do that. So, I think, and I try to help people understand what they don't want to do. Now, once we know that, we never have to think about it again. You just know that's not what you're going to do. And so to me, because I have this fascination with orchids, so echelon orchid is like you've achieved the highest tier. Like whatever it is for you, you've achieved the highest tier until you've achieved it, because then there's always another tier to go. So it's infinite. It's just going to keep going. So I did a podcast with some friends, and I'll be picking that back up again here soon, at least on my own, kind of just talking and putting out my thoughts. It was just really getting my thoughts out there to help me with my book. Maybe I'll actually finish it this year. I've got a lot of chapters written. I just have to go through that editorial process, and what am I missing in here? Because I think it can apply to any industry. It doesn't have to be cybersecurity. It could be business. It could be on the IT side. It could be marketing. So I do that. I help other executives learn how to be an executive. A lot of them, they get this title and they don't know really how to act. They One of the things that I see a lot of executives do that is wrong, and I did it myself, and my former CEO Rick Siegel from Fixmo kind of hit me over the head with this. All right, you've got that chief title. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. You already have a seat at the table. Your job now is to help everyone else. Right? You're there. And I think everyone should be doing that from the beginning. The more you are clapping for everyone else, the better you're going to be. So
Yeah.
I believe a lot of people, and you'll get this uh, because you're there in Maryland. When you're steaming blue crabs, you never have to put a lid on the pot, because as soon as one starts to escape, all the rest of them pull them right back down. Well, that's most people. For me, I want to help them achieve whatever it is, and when they get there, even if they get there before me, that's fine. That's great for them. I hear so many people when they hear someone get promoted, like, I can't believe that person get promoted. Why did they get promoted and not me? Well, that's the reason why, because you're wondering why they didn't do it, and why they got it and not you.
Yep.
You can only control yourself, and so I help them with those voices. How do you help these others? And one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of managers and executives make is they want to spend their time with the people who are low performers. That's a big mistake. I think it's Price's Law that says the square root of an organization does 50% of the work, and then the rest of the organization does the other 50%. So if I lose one of that square root of the organization, I just lost a lot of performance. As a leader, I will never tell someone they can't meet with me. It's your job to come, schedule some time. Let's meet, even if you're a low performer. But if you're a high performer, I'm going to spend more time with you. I'm going to seek you out, because I need to make sure you're not stressed, that you're getting things done, that I'm giving you everything you need to get your job done. And I help them with that. Like, how do you figure those things out? So I mean, that's a big part of Echelon Orchid. I had some, virtual CISO clients for a while. I still have some people I do consulting with, but my focus has been on building Jovia and the cybersecurity team, and getting this cyber literacy and cyber hygiene message out.
That's fantastic. Now you mentioned your distillery, and I think it's only fair that we talk about it a little bit here because that's pretty cool. So can you tell us some more?
Yeah, yeah. It's Dragon's Mouth Distillery. It's here in Elkhart, Indiana. We last year we won 13 medals across 5 different products. We don't do, as probably no surprise to your audience maybe at this point, I don't do anything normal. So, my wife and I, we make unusual whiskeys, unusual, agave spirit because it's not 100% agave. It's got some Oaxacan corn in there, some a weird aged spiced rum. It's more of like a Spanish rum versus the Mediterranean or rather Caribbean. Whiskeys that use unusual grains rather than just your typical bourbons and ryes. We try to take things with the approach of if you can't find a way, make one. And if you want something like everyone else has, we'll gladly refer you to one of those great distillers that make a great bourbon or a great rye. We enjoy being called, the rebel in the spirits industry, or we one of our customers like you're just doing everything like a rebel would do. Yeah, we are. We don't use traditional stills. We use an old like moonshiner still.
That's
It's
cool.
not the fastest, certainly, certainly not the cheapest, but we like to do things that are going to provide as much flavor as possible. And part of that is in everything in life, you should make this decision for yourself, regardless of what industry you're in. Do you want to be General Motors or do you want to be Mercedes? There's a market for both, but that's going to dictate every decision you make from that point forward. General Motors is going to be about a commodity. They're going to make something for everyone. Mercedes is going to be about quality in every step of the production process, and it's not going to be available to everyone. And that's okay. General Motors makes a lot more money than Mercedes, but Mercedes makes a lot more per employee.
So
And
we're
so I
talking.
like the Mercedes approach.
That's right. We're talking Mercedes, a distillery here. So
Yeah.
what's your favorite drink right now that you guys are making with?
So for me and my buddy of mine, Dr. Jason Pittman, who I'll give a little shout out to him. He's out in Australia. He won the a Fulbright, it's either scholarship or fellowships, Fulbright fellowship. He's studying some AI and cyber out in Australia for the next 6 months. So he nicknamed me on one of the shows that we did because we like to on New Year's Eve we would predict what was going to happen, the next year. And I started also kind of trolling some of my peers and predict what the experts were going to predict because they just seemed to like rotate them around. So he started
Uh,
calling me Nostradamus. uh, so I crafted a mash bill for Nostradamus that is 70% triticale, the hybrid grain of wheat and rye that started in Northern Europe in the late 1800s.
cool.
And that's because they couldn't grow wheat there. So rye will grow anywhere. So they splice rye to it. And then it's 30% Danko rye. It's an heirloom rye out of the mid-Atlantic. So I'm from Maryland. I had to bring some of that rye there. So it's a very unique whiskey that triticale gives you a lot of like toffee up front, and then you get some rye spice at the back. So that's my favorite. Um, Not just because it has the Nostradamus moniker on there, but it was
Sure.
really again I'm the aspect was as we were talking about with the cyber piece. I want to predict what's next, so I'm predicting the next grain that distillers are going to start using, and I believe the triticale is something that they're going to do. There's a lot more brewers that are starting to use it because it's very low in gluten. So I think in that case, you'll see some. So I just kind of played off that. I think they're even if they don't, which e- even if they don't, shame on them because they're missing out on something. But if they do, great. It just proves what I was out to prove that we're looking to be leaders, not followers, and everything that I do. I'm going to carve my own path. I'm not looking to take the path that everyone else took. Um, 'Cause
I love that.
just like jujitsu, which I practice quite often, and I take this in the cybersecurity. You got to be comfortable in being uncomfortable, and as long as I keep showing up for every class, I'm going to get better.
That's
So
fantastic.
just
So
keep showing
can
up.
all right, keep showing up. Can people order your your spirits online? Is it something you got to get through a distributor? How does it work for people?
Well,
How can they get it?
as of right now, you have to be in Indiana. And we're small, very small
Mhm.
micro distillery. There's a lot of rules in shipping alcohol across state lines,
Yeah.
especially spirits. So at some point, we will, be able to do so. Like the biggest challenge that we have to find a retailer who's willing to do it for us, because then there's different rules for all of them. So
Yeah.
the retailer, they can ship things. We also have to get that retailer to sign up. And I think if we win more awards, we'll get there.
Absolutely. So about how many bottles are you doing a year now? Where as a micro
Yeah,
distillery?
last year we sold about 2,600 last year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was right around
That's
there.
fantastic.
It was a little bit more than actually we grew about 35% from the first year, and we were shut down for about 5 months because we had to put in a kitchen.
Hmm.
So, Indiana has some weird laws. One of them, we used to not have to have, happy hour. You couldn't have a happy hour. Whatever price you set for your alcohol at the beginning of the day, it had to stay that way. Well, now they changed the laws. They say, okay, you can set 20 hours a week to have different prices. Well, once they did that, they forced us to make food, basically to serve food. Well, we
Yeah,
weren't set up for it. We had to shut down. And so we lost some production, but that's okay. It was just one more chink in the armor. But even with that, 35% growth being shut down for, 4.5, 5 months.
that's fantastic. Super cool. Dan, I
That's what
can't
I'm
thank
doing
you
at
enough
4 o'clock in the morning.
that's right.
Yeah,
I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been a blast.
absolutely.
I'd actually like to have you come back on and talk about a whole bunch more topics if you're open to it. But,
Absolutely.
but before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you, Jovia, and all of the cool work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So great place is just on LinkedIn. I think it says like it's either like Dr. Dan Cygenics, something like that. Cygenics, that's our branded cybersecurity team. So we like to put out tips and tricks that are kind of for the everyday person. So it's not necessarily what true cybersecurity professionals are going to be doing, but maybe you could take that and give it to your employees to do, because we're trying to put things in the words that the everyday person can understand and implement. Right, that's the key. I want them to be able to take what we're doing, make it actionable. So that's also Cygenics on LinkedIn, Cygenics on Twitter, uh, no LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. There might even be one on TikTok. I don't know. I'd have that person. But if you put something out there on LinkedIn, then Abgen would probably get back to you and let you know all the different places. So we are definitely trying to be everywhere we can to help everyone along their individual, cyber hygiene journey.
That's fantastic. Dan, thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.